Can you believe it? Tinibu? Tinibu? Nana Akufo-Addo and all of them, they were going along. They were going to take $20 million from France to wage war in West Africa, to turn West Africa into a war zone, to overthrow the governments in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. $20 million.
Whenever I say my PENDREAM TV, PENDREAM TV, there, I see them, yopo.
And I have no doubt that he means well. I have no doubt that he's passionate about the development of his country. And I have no doubt that his intentions are not different from my own intentions. So I ask myself, what is it that drives a young person, educated, who has passion for his country, who wants his country to progress, to come to the conclusion that neocolonialism is a very good thing? What is it that does that to a young man, especially one who is passionate about the development of his country? And I've asked myself many questions since yesterday. Now, I think that what has led to this situation is the miseducation that all of us have been subjected to over many years, over hundreds of years. The miseducation that lawyer Pierre Dankwa spoke about. The miseducation which said that if you wear African clothes, you are inferior. The miseducation which asked students to write essays about the good and bad effects of colonialism. The miseducation which led to the development of proverbs and sayings like Bronyanye John and so on. This gentleman is a victim of miseducation. You understand? And it is important that relevant material is important, that a correct appreciation of our history is made available to our citizens. Because it is the only way of freeing their minds from what Bob Marley describes as mental enslavement. And it is for this reason that this morning I'm so very highly impressed by the presentation which my colleague here, lawyer Pierre Dankwa, has made. I'm so very impressed. I'm even more impressed that he did not behave like me. You know, I come, speak my mind, and walk away. But he actually put it down. He wrote it. You understand? And I would urge him right now to make what he delivered today available to us. So we can actually publish it on the website of the Inside and Pan-African Television, so that we can publish it in the Inside newspaper, so we can make it available to all the media outlets, you know, that we have relations with throughout the world, so that this can reach as many people as possible and awaken them from their slumber. It is important. It's important that such work is exposed. It's important that those who have managed to liberate themselves from the propaganda of the colonialists, of the neocolonialists and so on, should begin to put their thoughts together in newspaper articles, in radio conversations, in books and so on, and to spread it as far and wide as is possible. And I will urge my brother here that sometime after this program, he should make what he has written available to us for general distribution. It will contribute a lot to deal with the problems that confront us. You see, I'm sitting here and I'm just wondering these leaders we have in Africa, who are they? Where are they coming from? What shapes their thinking? What is wrong with them? And possibly, what is wrong with them is exactly what is wrong with this young journalist that I've spoken about. You understand?
Yeah.
France today says that it wants to be a partner in or for Africa's development. France. So I sit back and say, I'm looking at the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the relations it has had with France for how long? For decades, for over 100 years and so on. That relationship, which was also framed as a partnership for development, where has it left the Democratic Republic of the Congo? Today, estimates by those who know, indicate that the Democratic Republic of the Congo is sitting on wealth estimated at close to $80 trillion. That is the wealth that the Democratic Republic of Congo is sitting on. In spite of that, close to 80% of the population of the Democratic Republic of the Congo cannot feed themselves. So how can today France look us in the face and say that we want to be your partners for development? That partnership for development in the Congo, what are the results? What is there to show? France claims to have been a partner for development in many countries. La Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, Congo, and so on. After hundreds of years, what is there to show for that partnership for development? The only thing which is available to show is that France has managed to transfer its problems to these African countries. And these African countries have been totally impoverished and so on. You understand? And our leaders don't know this. And our leaders are jumping on aeroplanes, going to Nairobi to meet Macron so that Macron will give them some magic to solve their problems. What's wrong with these leaders? Justice, what is wrong with our leaders? I can't believe it. You understand? Now, the other panelists have spoken a lot. I agree with everything they have said, and I'm not going to speak for a very long time. You understand? But listen, what has been the relationship between France and its colonies, or its former colonies? In fact, to say that its former colonies is not a true statement because they are still colonies. The colonial relationship has not changed. What has changed is that that colonial relationship has been camouflaged, but its essence remains intact. You understand?
Yeah.
If you look at all the former colonies of France, the Francophonies and so on, you understand? All of them have had over the years to keep their foreign reserves in the central bank of France so that they can use the CFA franc. What does that mean? In practice, that has meant that some of these countries have actually borrowed their own money. They put their money in the central bank of France, they go and borrow their own money, and they pay interest on their own money that they have borrowed to France. This is naked exploitation. It doesn't make any sense at all. And this model has not changed. This is the model which was being sold in Nairobi. And this is the model which was being sold and for which our heads of states use the little money that we have to buy plane tickets, to fuel jets, to carry officials to go to Nairobi to sanctify. Unbelievable. I want to look at the relationship between France and Niger. France has been in Niger for years, pretending to be a partner for development. Until the Chami coup took place in Niger, Niger was considered as the poorest or one of the poorest countries in the world, not in Africa. If you put all the continents together, all the countries together and so on, Niger was the poorest after many years of this kind of relationship with France. So the coup occurs in Niger. Chami takes over. They sack the French troops. They take control over their uranium resources. They take control of their gold resources and so on. And within 2 years, Niger becomes the fastest growing economy in the world. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? Niger, which was hosting the largest drone base of the US in the world, the whole world, if you look at all the drone bases in the world, Niger was hosting the largest drone base of the US Army. Niger said, no, we are not going to have this. How can we host the largest drone base of the US in the world and be so poor and miserable? Niger is making progress. Now, for me, the most insulting thing is that after Niger broke away, after Burkina Faso and Mali broke away from this French entanglement, France looked us in the face, called West African leaders and said, I give you $20 million to go and overthrow the new governments in the 3 countries. And our leaders were going along. Can you believe it? Tinibu? Tinibu? Nana Akufo-Addo and all of them, they were going along. They were going to take $20 million from France to wage war in West Africa, to turn West Africa into a war zone, to overthrow the governments in Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. $20 million. That is what France offered. France has no respect for us. $20 million. I mean, only last week we were hearing that it was being alleged that one Ghanaian MP through romance scam alone had backed $32 million. Romance scam could bring $32 million. France gives us $20 million to go and die. And our leaders fall for it. Incredible. What kind of leaders are these? These leaders, really, what do they have in their heads? Sometimes I wonder whether some of our leaders actually have brain matter in their head. And sometimes it seems to me that what they have in their head is sawdust. Incredible. It took the resistance of ordinary people in the streets and so on, to prevent our leaders from driving us into that calamity. In fact, the states, the Nigerian states bordering Niger said, okay, you want to go and fight Niger. They told Tinibu, you want to go and fight Niger, you're on your own. You cannot use our territory to launch any attack on Niger. The Nigerian parliament, under pressure, voted against the intended war against Niger. In Ghana, organizations like the Socialist Movement of Ghana and so on mobilized and said, no, we would not allow our soldiers to go and die for this foolish cause and so on. This mass mobilization presented that catastrophe that our leaders were ready to plunge us into. But it didn't end there. Imperialism does not stop in the face of opposition. So since then, so many maneuverings have taken place. The European Union, NATO, and so on, they have asked Ghana, Benin, and La Côte d'Ivoire to provide them space for setting up drone bases. To do what? Drone bases are not for the manufacture of chocolates. So those drone bases that the Europeans want us to allow them to establish in Ghana, La Côte d'Ivoire, and Benin, what are they meant for? Are they not meant for the same purpose of overthrowing the patriotic revolutions in Mali, in Niger, and in Burkina Faso? We must resist this madness with every force we can command in order to preserve our dignity and in order to create the conditions for fighting against underdevelopment and poverty. It is our duty so to do. Can you believe that whilst we were at the United Nations General Assembly, when Africa and the CARICOM states united and presented a resolution insisting that the transatlantic slave trade is a crime against humanity, the gravest crime against humanity, some of our leaders were actually signing defense cooperation agreements with the European Union. Hey! So why did you go to the UN General Assembly? If we are going to end up signing defense cooperation agreements with the very people who imposed the transatlantic slave trade on you, the very people who still use their armies to maintain the neocolonial order, the very people who are still responsible for underdevelopment and poverty and so on, why did you go to the UN? Why did you waste our time going to the UN and so on? But this is the reality which has gripped us. Now, it is obvious that France is realizing that the African people are waking up to its exploitation. The African people are waking up to the fact that the relationship we have built with the French over many years has not benefited us in any way, and indeed has contributed significantly to our underdevelopment. And they're trying all kinds of things. Some of it very simple, and so on. Ask yourself and check, why is it that France today is sending out Africans or black persons to African countries as ambassadors? Check. The last two ambassadors, French ambassadors to Ghana, are Africans. There was a man here whom I met at a function, and I told him my peace of mind. I met him at a function. He came to me and said, I am the French ambassador to Ghana. I said, you? Why are you deceiving yourself? You are the Trojan horse being presented to us. You are not an ambassador, you are a Trojan horse. You understand? He has been replaced by another African. This deception is an old story. You understand? When the CIA wanted to overthrow Nkrumah, what did they do? They sent a black person here as ambassador. Okay? So that you cannot see the person as a stranger and so on. You can't see that the person is pursuing a different interest. The color of the skin is like yours. We should start looking beyond the color of the skin and look at the most important things. Condoleezza Rice, U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, is black. Does she pursue the same aspirations as we pursue and so on? No. So the question is not about the color of the skin. The question is the ideology which drives this relationship, the intention and so on. And the intention is nothing less than exploitative, and we need to wake up to that reality. You know, this summit in Nairobi, France claims to be a democratic country. Indeed, France claims to be protecting democracy all over the world and so on. It's part of his raison d'etre in the relationship with Africa and so on. And yet, the people of Kenya and their allies who mounted a counter summit to expose what the French intended to do in Nairobi and so on, were arrested without charge and trial and dumped into prison. All right? No. The Alternative Forum, organized by the Communist Party of Kenya, Marxists and so on, was smashed by the police. Smashed. They didn't want authentic African voices to be heard. They didn't want voices of protest to be heard. So Ruto and his counterpart, Macron, came together and smashed this protest. As we speak, many of the activists are still being locked up in Kenyan cells. I think it's important for progressive forces around the world and in Africa especially to call for the immediate and unconditional release of all the activists who have been locked up in French jails. What did they do? They didn't go to the streets with guns. They didn't even carry sticks and so on. Peaceful protest against an attempt by France to re-establish its strength as a colonial power in Africa. And you arrest them and lock them up. It doesn't make any sense. And all the patriotic forces in Africa and everywhere need to come together and wage a relentless campaign, a vigorous campaign for the release of all of these, activists. You see, my brothers, that summit in Nairobi is a symptom of something which started happening in Africa over some period. You see, when we gained independence from the British Empire and so on, the British cleverly established what they called the Commonwealth to keep us in check. They brought us into the Commonwealth, created the impression that we have a common destiny with the United Kingdom and so on. The French copied the British, or the British copied the French, whichever, and created what they call the Francophonie, and brought together their former colonies so that they could control them in that arrangement. That is, you know what is happening now?
No.
The English-speaking countries, which were in the Commonwealth, some of them, have now decided that, British control is not enough. They also want French control. So they have joined the Francophonie. Ghana joined the Francophonie under President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. When there was agitation that we should leave the Commonwealth, it doesn't serve our interest. It's a relic of colonialism and so on. The Akufo-Addo government decided that no, the Commonwealth was not enough. We need more. So they joined the Francophonie. Togo decided that French neocolonialism was not enough. So Togo too has joined the British Commonwealth. Hey, African leaders. They will kill us. These African leaders, they will kill us. Ghana joins Francophonie, Togo joins Commonwealth. And the comedy continues. But you see, I'm looking at Africa. And I'm told, and I believe that to be true, that Africa has two-thirds of the world's arable lands. Two-thirds of the world's arable land is in Africa. And we beg for food aid. Can you believe it? We beg for food aid. We have two-thirds of the world's arable lands. And we're begging for food aid. And we think that We can solve our agricultural problems by hobnobbing with France, by hobnobbing with Belgium, by allowing the United States to do as it pleases in our countries and so on. That's the way forward. And then I hear African countries appealing to Ukraine for fertilizer. I said, my goodness, what is wrong with us? General Kutu Achampo, graduate of the Swedro Business College, not Harvard, not Oxford, General Kutu Achampo, he sat down and said, look, we need to develop our agriculture. And that the way forward does not lie in the application of chemical fertilizer. So we should use organic fertilizer. And he established compost plants so that our waste can be turned into organic fertilizer to promote our agriculture. The first one was built at Teshinungwa. It died a long time ago. Nobody cares. This is General Kutu Achampo, graduate of the Swedro Business College. Now, even if you want to use chemical fertilizers and so on, why? In West Africa, Nigeria alone produces 2 million barrels of oil a day. Nigeria has the hydrocarbon potential to produce chemical fertilizers. Angola is one of the biggest exporters of crude oil and gas and so on. Angola has a huge potential for producing chemical fertilizer. Libya has, and so on. So why are we dependent on European countries for the supply of fertilizer? Something must be wrong with us. President Muhammad's reset agenda would only make sense if we recognize these opportunities and conditions available to the African people and to the Ghanaian people and exploit them. You know, I'm looking at what is happening in Africa over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks and so on, and I'm worried. What is happening? You have a situation where because of the recklessness of a small band of lumping elements in South Africa, the pursuit of xenophobic, agenda and so on, we in Africa are beginning to tear ourselves apart. Yesterday I saw some story, I can't tell whether it is true or not. These days, social media, you have to be careful. Who says that one African country has ordered all South Africans to leave within 48 hours. It is madness. I've heard senators in Nigeria argue that MTN needs to be shut down. All South African businesses should be closed and so on. Why? Because of the reckless actions of some lumping elements in South Africa. What we have to realize as Africans is that there is no alternative to African unity as a mechanism for our survival and development. So no matter what happens in Africa, our central goal ought to be the goal that Kwame Nkrumah, Modibo, Keita, and Sekou Touré left us with, African continental unity. And that is why I feel so proud. So proud. I've had problems with him on other issues, but I feel so proud now about the very, very mature statement which was issued by our Minister for Foreign Affairs. One who says that the African Union should discuss this matter of xenophobic attacks. We should have a frank, honest discussion with our South African, friends, brothers and sisters and so on, about xenophobic attacks and come to some firm conclusions in the interest of Africa. And he says that he doesn't think, he has issued a statement which says that he doesn't think that the South African government is reckless and irresponsible, that if we sat down to discuss, we will find a way out. For me, I see these xenophobic attacks in South Africa as a manifestation of the dangerous effects of apartheid rule. The miseducation that our brothers and sisters in South Africa were subjected to. I see it as an unfinished business in the fight against apartheid. You understand? I see it as a reawakening of the African people to the reality that the menace of apartheid is still there and we need to fight it and so on. Rather than hostile actions of our sisters and brothers in South Africa, because it is not. Because there are several forces in South Africa, including the trade unions, including the left parties, the Communist Party and so on, which are opposed to xenophobia and which are fighting xenophobia. We should link up with those forces, those healthy forces, to crush xenophobia. And you don't crush xenophobia by cracking heads and arresting people on the streets and putting them in jail. You crack xenophobia by emphasizing the benefits of cooperation. You understand? You crack xenophobia by explaining to those beating Nigerians in the streets that when the Nigerian specialist surgeons leave their clinics and hospitals, they cannot replace them. And that Ghanaian engineers and doctors who are there to help them, to help elevate them. You solve the problem by pointing out to the shack dwellers in Johannesburg, in Cape Town and so on, that there's an alternative path to development which would improve their access to education, to healthcare, to housing and so on. And that alternative path to development will unite all of us as Africa to see this great continent as a habitat for all of us. You understand? Yeah. That is the way you approach the fight against xenophobia. Whatever it is, I am embarrassed. I am very deeply embarrassed. So deeply embarrassed that the French president can call our leaders together, say, come to me, come. Come to Nairobi. Come to Nairobi and let's work out a framework so that I can continue to dominate your economy, so we can continue to exploit you. And they go there at our expense. It's so very embarrassing. So very embarrassing. I remember not too long ago, a couple of decades ago, seeing a press release from the U.S. Embassy in Accra. Just as maybe you were too young then, so you probably didn't hear about it. It became quite an issue. The U.S. Embassy in Accra issued a statement saying that the U.S. president, one of these U.S. presidents, was visiting Senegal, and that African leaders, West African leaders who wanted a photo opportunity should go to Senegal. And some of the leaders went for photo opportunity with U.S. president. Some of these cranks posing as leaders, they went for the photo opportunity. My goodness, African leaders, why don't you stop embarrassing us? My goodness, African leaders, why don't you stop your... Must have finished.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Pratt, for your submission. I would want to take a few of our messages and we continue with the other topics. This one says, even students doing history in Ghana's high schools cannot completely understand what they are doing because the syllabus is not well structured. You finish school but with no knowledge of history. Thompson Bauer sent in that one. He says, Miss Rice was the leading person to overthrow Mugabe in Zimbabwe, calling Zimbabwe axis of power. All right, thank you so much for your message. This one says, good morning, I am Sam. When the white man went to ask God why he gave all the resources to Africa and nothing for them, God replied, see the kind of people I'm going to put in Africa. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for your message. This one says, I'm Eric Bauer, watching you guys from Sunyani. You are doing a great job, and we are also learning a lot from you. Keep the fire burning. Africa belongs to Africans and nobody else. Shalom. All right. Thank you so much for your message. This one says, Justice, we know the truth, but why do we fail to always acknowledge it? I agree that the aid or investment they give us is mainly centered on where they can make a profit and have control to sustain their daily survival in their world. My question is, shouldn't we be guided by the words of Osagyefo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, to examine whatever they propose to us and to reject them knowing it won't favor our cause? Today, the government is gradually getting full control of our good. Soon, we will determine our own price, like Osagyefo, to our cocoa and other things. I hear in 2030, no materials will leave Ghana in a raw state. It is too far. I think we should dictate our world unless we have no choice but to bow to their powers or enticements. Since we don't know the value of the things we have and how to manipulate them. From SNET. SNET, thank you so much for your message. Chief Mohammed Dramani says, good morning to you and to your panelists. In fact, I love today's discussion. I am very happy with this topic. Please repeat this discussion twice this week. Also, let Ghanaians resist the Akufo-Addo military agreement with America. It is too humiliating to Nkrumah's Ghana. Ghana should also buy fuel rather from Nigeria. Government should be forced to buy from Nigeria. All right, Ghanaians should rise up against the American base in Ghana. The presence of the MPP bride in Ghana and their love for money makes it difficult for Ghana to break loose. Dramani, thank you so much for your message. This one says, kudos to your panelists. An eye-opener discussion. Very brilliant submissions. Very Pan-Africanist. If there is a country to fear and dread today, it is France. There is this saying that fear the Romans even if they offer you gifts. France is diabolic and callous. They exploit Africa to enrich themselves without mercy to the exploited. They must be avoided because they have nothing to offer except seeking their own interest. Gameli in Kumasi sent in that one. This one says, Ghana must wake up to help Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger because Western powers are fighting with them because of gold and lithium. When Burkina fall, Ghana will never survive. The Western Alliance is fighting Burkina Faso and Mali because of their lithium. Okay, all right, thank you so much for your message. This one says, good morning, Justice, and to your panelists. The discussion on renewed French influence in Africa and the France-Africa Summit in Nairobi highlights important concerns about sovereignty, economic independence, and Africa, the future of Africa. While France is seen by some as a security and development partner, critics argue that its long-standing political, military, and economic influence reflect neocolonialism and continued dependency. This has contributed to growing anti-France sentiments in countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. As African countries expand relations with China, Russia, and other global powers, the key challenge is ensuring that Africa does not replace one dependency with another. Ultimately, Africa's future will depend on strong institutions, transparent governance, regional cooperation, industrial growth, and the ability of African leaders to negotiate in the continent's long-term interests. Humado Sichofe, incoming NDC branch organizer, Guan constituency, OT region. Thank you so much for your message. This one says, Mr. Kwesi Pratt, Almighty Allah will bless you for what you are doing. All right, thank you so much for your message. This one says, Senior, the MPP should keep pushing propaganda against the NDC government. They will remain in opposition for a long time because the youth are seeing everything on social media. Okay, all right, thank you so much for your message. This one says, good morning to you. You are doing great and you are doing a great job, but we are ready to be ourselves as Africans from you sent in this one from New Edubiase. Okay, thank you so much for your message. This one says, the African leaders must wake up. Enough of the slavery. France and US have taken Africans for granted. Greetings to Lawyer Abbas Nuruddin. All right, thank you so much for your message. Okay, let me do a few of our messages on Facebook, then I'll come back for the discussion to continue. Let me remind our viewers that we are streaming on Facebook and on YouTube. You can join us via Facebook at Pan African Television, also on YouTube at Pan African Television. There are a lot of messages. This one says, the chemical fertilizer is killing us gradually. Kofi Simon sent in that one. Daniel Okanse.
Dedi kama mamena PENDREAM TV ase. Na so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.